Shabbat Shalom. Mitchell's passing out a sheet. So is Lee. Happy birthday, Mitchell. And happy anniversary to the Bronheims. And so good to see you, Ben. Today, I'll say I have a soft spot. You won't be surprised to hear this. I have a soft spot for uncovering the stories of women who've been forgotten from history. So that's what we're going to do today. Has anyone heard of Serach bat Asher? Ooh, okay, Lois, we have one. We'll call on you for some thoughts, some insight. Yes. So this is a character, Jacob's granddaughter, and we're gonna study some midrashim about her. But just to frame what I want to ask of us as we go through the stories, which are like I said, mostly midrash because she's only mentioned 3 times in Tanakh. These are the framing questions for us. What kind of a character is she? Why was she created in Midrash? What purpose is she serving in the story? What are the stories about her adding to our understanding of Torah, to our understanding of our people? And we'll see shortly that she comes up in different periods of history, longer than the generation in which she was born. So it seems that she may have been immortal. It seems that she may have become a mythological figure or a folk hero or maybe even a symbol of something. So what is she doing in the story? And why was she brought back generations later for different pieces of our history? So that's what we're going to look at today. The first text at the top is actually from this week's Torah portion, Vayigash. We didn't read this part, but it's the genealogy of the families who went down to Egypt. So Jacob's sons and Jacob's grandsons, and then once in a while there's a woman mentioned, and she's mentioned as one of Asher's sons. So we get one of Asher's children. We get the list of sons, and then we get their sister Serach. That's the first text. And then in the middle text, this is another case where we're going to get a list. This is in Numbers, much later on in the Torah, where we get a list of also Asher's children. She's mentioned again. And then the last one is another genealogy from Chronicles, where she's again listed in the same way. So she's in the Tanakh text, she's really listed as just one of Asher's kids. We don't get anything else about her. But she is brought into the story through Midrash. So the fourth text at the bottom of the first page, which we're going to return to at the end, I want to share a drush by Dr. Bert Vysotsky, who's a Midrash expert who also taught me the stories about Serach bat Asher. So we're going to return to this story, but I want to ground it in the story we've read today from the Torah. But first, before we see where she's added in, if you could open up your Chumash one more time. I know you just put it away. Page 279. This is a dramatic part of the story when the brothers go back to Egypt and they they tell their father Jacob that Joseph is still alive. So if you look starting at verse 25, they went up from Egypt, came to their father Jacob. They told him, Joseph is still alive. Od Yosef Chai. Yes, he's ruler over the whole land of Egypt. And then we read that Jacob's heart went numb, for he did not believe them. At first, he didn't believe them. But when they recounted all that Joseph has said to them, when they saw the wagons that Joseph had sent, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And then he said, enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I must go and see him before I die. So this is the narrative we get in the Torah about what it takes for Jacob to come to Egypt. It seems that our midrashic tradition, the rabbis reading this story, didn't think that was quite enough to convince Jacob. So we are going to get a midrash about that. But I just want to look at what we have, and something about this story didn't quite add up and didn't feel like it would have been enough. Maybe they were imagining Jacob would be too shocked. I mean, we read that his heart went numb, but maybe he would be too, traumatized by, all those years of mourning, assuming Joseph was dead. There are a lot of reasons we could say the text maybe needed more. Any thoughts on that first before we look at the Midrash itself? Do you feel like something's missing from this story? No? Okay. Susan says no. I mean, I'll say, it seems like it's enough of a story. We read he changed his mind. His heart was numb, and then he saw some evidence that maybe Joseph was alive, and then he decided to go. But, yeah.
I like the commentary at the bottom of the page that he did not believe him. This is the fate of a liar, even when telling the truth. A liar is not believed.
So maybe he also didn't believe them because he knew that they were liars. Maybe that was part of what was going on. Okay, so now let's look at the Midrash. This is a really beautiful story that Sarah, so Jacob's granddaughter, actually sings to him, and it kind of handles or responds to his emotions in a more loving, nurturing way, and maybe that helps him to believe that Joseph is still alive. Okay, so this is the bottom of that page. Sarah took her harp and hastened unto Jacob, and she sat down before him. And she sang and she played beautifully upon the harp, and she sweetly relayed her message. Joseph, my uncle, is alive, and he reigns over all the land of Egypt, and he's not dead. And she continued to repeat these words, and Jacob heard her, and they stirred him. So we hear that he's responding emotionally too. And he heard her message a second and a third time. Joy came over Jacob's heart because of her sweet message, and the Spirit of God came over him. And then he knew that her words were true, maybe because, as Sue pointed out, he didn't quite believe the brothers. And Jacob blessed Sarah for conveying this message before him. And he said, "My daughter, may death never prevail against you throughout eternity, for you have restored life to my soul." So he gives her this blessing. It's kind of a strange blessing. What is it? What does he say? What is it?
Granting her immortality.
Lois says he's granting her immortality. Well, if you think immortality is good, I guess it's a blessing. If you don't think it's good, I guess it's not. But he gives her something in exchange, something he thinks of as good, because he's grateful to her. He doesn't think it's a curse, right? I mean, he thinks it's good. So let's see if that worked. And maybe from this midrash was built the other midrashim. Any other responses before we move on? I don't have another example of someone getting immortality like that. So, Lois, anything you've heard about this moment?
Yeah, because she was alive so many years later.
Yeah.
To find the bones.
Exactly. It's like you were transitioning us perfectly into the next text. So if you'll recall, so far we know she's part of the generation that is coming to Egypt. She's Jacob's granddaughter, and she helped to convince him to come down to Egypt. What is she doing hundreds of years later at the end of the time in Egypt, of the Israelites' time in Egypt? That may have been what. So either the earlier midrash came first, and then the later one, or the later one came first, and as Lois implied or said, we needed to create the earlier midrash to make sense of it. So this is the second one. This is from Tosefta Sota, so it's like early, it's like Tannaitic, early rabbinic. But just to give some background before we look at it, does anyone remember this promise about Joseph and how his burial wishes, like what did he wish for at the end of his life? John? He wanted to be brought back to be buried in Israel in the promised land. So he made his brothers, on his deathbed, he made his brothers vow that they would bring him back. But his brothers were not there to do it. So it's on Moses, along many generations later, Moses to fulfill that promise. How does Moses? This is the beginning of the midrash. How did Moses know where Joseph had been buried? So that's a story. I also would have never thought of this. The kind of midrashic mind is so creative. So I would have thought, well, if you're passing on the vow, you're passing on the promise to do it, to do the burial, to bring Joseph, back to Israel, then you would also maybe let the person know where he's buried. Like, that's part of the job. You're passing on the task. But in this midrash, Moses knows he's supposed to take Joseph's body to the land of Israel, but he doesn't know where it's buried. So he needs help from this woman who's somehow still alive, right? So this is the story. This is the bottom of the second page, source number 5. They said, Sarah, daughter of Asher, was of the same generation. So they're asking, how did Moses know? She was of the same generation as Joseph. Well, she was one generation later, but she was of the same generation. And she went and said to Moses, in the Nile River, Joseph is buried. No? Well, this is the story. It may be unbelievable, but this is the story. That happens a lot, that we're like, what? Why would they do that? And the Egyptians made for him metal skewers and affixed them with wood. I don't know why the Egyptians are helping Moses, but they are. Moses went and stood at the Nile River and said, he's standing at the edge of the river. Joseph, he's talking to the dead guy. The time has come for the holy, blessed one to redeem Israel. Behold, the Shekhinah is delayed for you, and the Israelites are delayed for you, and the clouds of glory are delayed for you. Delayed meaning they want to leave Egypt, but they have one more important task to complete. If you reveal yourself good, we'll bring you to the land of Israel. And if not, we are cleansed of the oath which you have sworn upon our fathers. So what does that mean? That's confusing. To the dead guy, yes. It's your fault, right? If you don't reveal yourself, it's your fault. We fulfilled our obligation, yeah. But it seems like the oath has been passed on, but Moses is saying, this is as much as I can do. Then the coffin of Joseph floated to the surface, and Moses took hold of it and went. So this is this also unbelievable, Donna? It's like what is it called? The surrealism, or it's a fairy magical realism. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Magical realism, right? That why would all of a sudden, right? He's dead, but he is able to hear and communicate with the living, and also he decides to let his body float up into to the surface of the Nile River. Yeah, Mitchell.
So a couple things. One is, not sure I believe it because it wasn't in the movie. But in terms of the Egyptians helping them, in the Torah, it talks about the Egyptians giving the Israelites
True.
things.
The Egyptians have been helpful in other times, yes.
And it's interesting. This is before the previous one that we read, with the previous midrash in terms of timing. And then I also
True.
have
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's right. We don't have to guess about that.
And I also have questions about that the burial in the Nile. A little weird, but
It is weird.
it said it floated. But that's
Well, so two things. That's important.
part of the matter.
That's two good points. Many good points from Mitchell always, but two ones I want to repeat into the microphone. That the date of the Midrashim does suggest, right, so the number 5 is much earlier than number 4. So that does answer the question. We don't always know which comes first, but we do know based on that, based on the chronology of the Midrashim, that this one came first, and then the number 5 was created to explain why she was still alive generations later. And number 2, how could it have been that why would he have been buried in the Nile? And with help from Samantha, it could have been that the water receded, he was buried near the water, yeah, something like that. It may have been unintentionally burial in the water. Yeah, Elliot, and then Donna.
Let's start with most midrash have no basis in fact, but are parables to carry forward a moral of story.
So what moral do you think is carrying forward?
I'm not sure,
Okay.
but Joseph was the prime minister minister, vizier, top official to a pharaoh that we most likely know is Akhenaten, the father of Tutankhamun. And while it is reported that Ramses eliminated references to all past pharaohs, there would have been a royal cemetery that would have been known to most people, even if it was no longer commemorated as the cemetery of the last dynasty.
Interesting. So it's not believable that he's buried in an unknown place.
That itself, his place would have been known given how high he was, given how much the Egyptians put on royal and VIP deaths.
Interesting.
Whether
Yeah.
he was mummified or not, I mean, he probably was treated in the same way as most of the mummies that have been stolen from Egypt and moved to
Interesting.
moved to the UK and other
Right.
places.
Zana. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he would. It's not surprising that they would know that some people, whether it was Moses himself, but that some people would have remembered that he was buried in this royal.
Right. And it wouldn't have been in the water. Okay.
And there's
Yeah.
nothing in Egyptian culture that was a very VIPs by throwing
Yeah.
them in the river.
So I'll say that the fact that it doesn't make sense historically actually helps, because it means that there's something in the rabbinic imagination that wanted to tell this story, even though there was less support kind of historically. Donna and then Jerry.
Yeah, just adding to that,
Yeah.
he would have been, again, a high official of the 18th dynasty before Akhenaten, some time before that. And the 19th dynasty, in which Ramses is, dovetailed right into that. So they would very much have known the burial places of all of the officials. Nobody was thrown into the Nile. I don't care what level you were at, nobody was buried in the Nile
Okay.
for a lot of logical reasons. But yeah.
Thank you to the Egyptology section. It helps a lot. It helps because, like I said, if it's not historically accurate, it means it has a creative or symbolic meaning. Yeah, Jerry.
Well, the statement about the Egyptians made for him metal skewers and affixed them with wood. Now everybody thinks him means Moses.
No.
But
I
that's
think it means Joseph.
to the burial.
Yeah, I think it means Joseph.
So there was something to do with that lowered it
Yeah,
or something.
I assumed it meant Joseph, but
Well, it's
it seems like there's disagreement on that.
half and half.
Yeah, it's half and half. Yeah. So, yes, Toby.
So Mitchell didn't see this in that movie, but it is in other movies, right? So it's in Lord of the Rings, right? So
Really? Joseph is in
not
Lord of the
Joseph,
Ring?
But there's this notion of getting to the moral of the story.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So there's this notion about oaths of our ancestors, right? So promises that our ancestors have made that in some ways we are responsible for, right? It's as though I had, if I were in Egypt, right? It has to be about me. It's not what God did for my ancestors. It's what God did for me. So it's something about us taking on that responsibility. So what I see here is another example of Moses taking on the responsibility of the people of Israel, and that we are all responsible for each other, right? And for the agreements that our ancestors made, right? So it's something about carrying on for the community. That's for me where I see the moral of the
Yeah.
story.
I really like that. And you or anyone else, why bring back Sarah for this? I understand why it's important for us to lift up that value of carrying on the oaths of our ancestors, but why are we bringing back, this woman? And what does it do how does it change the story that she's the one to do it? And how does it change the story that she's actually, she's been living for now hundreds of years?
Well, but there are women throughout, like Tamar and Judith, that kind of pop up here and there
Right.
that do things. So why not? I mean, yeah.
Why not? Yeah. Yeah.
The women
Hassan
seem to
Fredkin.
have a role in the Torah, not too, as a keeper of stories.
Keeper of stories.
Yeah, so Rebecca tells Joseph, tells
Right.
the story along. And the women seem to like have like the narrative going on, so it seems like Sarah keeps this tradition going, and maybe Sarah, I should say, keeps the tradition going. She represents the fact that the women understand to keep the narrative throughout history.
That's beautiful. I really like that. So it could have been any made-up character who brought this message across the generations, but it ends up being a female character, and I really like what you said about that's a common role, and a really empowering, positive role of women. Yeah, Rachel.
Maybe further back that up in the textual analysis, you can always see Hashem backing up the wives. When Sarah says, I want Hagar and Ishmael gone, God says, yeah, make them go. I don't want them here. Shoot. And then when Rebecca wants kind of schemes for Jacob to get the blessing, which I would say isn't so much narrative building, it's just lying to your husband. It's just deceit. God didn't want it to happen. If God wanted to intervene and be tricky, we wouldn't. The husband's not seeing something the women see, and God is like, yeah, the women are right. Do what they say.
Yep. Sometimes, yeah. Anything else before we? Okay, let's move on a little bit. Okay, Nancy.
On the Egyptian aspect, the royal power as a matriarch had only descended through women. So Sarah would have a bit more status, and the fact that she might have been more respected by the outside culture, and as a descendant of the Jewish.
Interesting. So maybe the culture was different in Egypt because they were being influenced by the Israelites in Egypt were being influenced by the surrounding culture. Interesting, yeah. Let's look a little at a few more. I don't know we're not going to get to all of them because of time. I'll say chronologically number 7 on the next page comes next, but I think we're going to skip it because it's very long. It'll be a bonus for you to take home. This is the idea that when the Israelites see, there's another piece in the story that seems to be missing. When the Israelites see the wonders that Moses is performing in Egypt, how are they going to believe that he's the Redeemer? So if you think about it, all these generations have passed. What would make the Israelites believe Moses? And so there are a few different answers to that question, but one answer is that Sarah brings this midrash. It's a textual midrash about the words pakod, pakadati, that words that were originally said to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, passed down to Sarah, and she's the one who brings them back at the exact right moment. They're supposed to be redemption language. It means I have surely visited you. It's language from God. And so she brings it back at just the right moment to convince the Israelites. So that's number 7. Number 6 is really, at the top of the page, is shorter, and it's also really beautiful. Does someone want to read this one? Rabbi Yochanan? Okay. He was sitting, he's from the 3rd century, so this is a later rabbinic text. He was sitting and expounding on how the waters of the Sea of Reeds were made into walls for the people Israel. And he was, like just chatting. And he said they were like lattice. And somehow Sarah is also in the same generation of Rabbi Yochanan. She's still alive in the 3rd century. So that's, pretty unbelievable. That's kind of more magical realism. And she says, no, actually, I was there. And it was not like that. Rather, it was like glass windows. So she's just hanging out like in the Beit Midrash in the 3rd century CE and correcting Rabbi Yochanan, which I love. And she's just like hanging out like, no, you're totally wrong about that, dude. It was like glass windows. It was not like a lattice. So I don't know if there's like a deeper meaning to that one, but at least it's quite funny, I think. It's funny. Oh. I don't know. Ampomata? Ela ke'ilin ampomata. So ampomata is the word that's supposed to mean glass. It sounds like it's, it's not an Aramaic word. So I don't know. Somebody is a glass expert in the room for sure, and they'll let us know. No? Okay. Phoenicians. See, I knew it. Alan says the Phoenicians were famous for their glass. This is, we're time traveling with Serach. So I want to just finish with the Dr. Vysotsky drash at the end. This is at the very bottom, source number 9. Does Serach dwell among us yet today? And this is, he's citing the drash that we read earlier about this week's Parsha. A late midrash called from Sefer HaYashar tells us why Serach merited to live forever. And this is the story about her telling Jacob the news. When the sons of Jacob went down to Egypt during the famine and were met there by their long-lost brother Joseph, he who forgave them, fed them, helped them survive, they realized they would have to inform their father, who was still anxiously awaiting their return to the land of Canaan. It would be difficult to let their father know of the cruel deception they had perpetrated upon him, allowing him for all those years to believe his beloved Joseph was dead, and watching Jacob mourn him without cease. Whom could they send to break this terrible yet exhilaratingly revivifying news to him? That's a good word, revivifying. The brothers sent Serach bat Asher. She took her lyre and sang to the elderly Jacob, Od Yosef Chai, Joseph still lives. And when he heard her song, his heart grew faint, for through all his years of despair, he yet held hope. Od Yosef Chai, she sang, the very words that Jacob longed to hear. With tears streaming down his cheeks, Jacob rewarded his granddaughter for being the bearer of such good tidings. He blessed her and rewarded her with the promise that she might live forever. May that song always be our hope. Od Yosef Chai, for so long as Joseph still lives, and through us forgives and nourishes his family, which is our family. Serach and the Jewish people live forever. That's beautiful. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you all.